Concluding, this is a clear example of how nuclear energy affects in all senses the humans and the nature. Some of the implication about using nuclear energy is that it needs to use a great source of electricity. The residues it produces, it needs to be thrown away in a special content, and the employees have to be entrained for an emergency situation.
There's a nuclear power plant in Mexico called Laguna Verde, and it is located in Alto Lucero Gutierrez Bajos, Veracruz. It generates 3.2% of the country's electric energy. According to the then in charge of building the plant, there was no control over the quality of the materials and construction equipment. The company that built the reactor, General Electric, had been expelled from the United States for malfunctions and design of its reactors. In the first test, there was an accident that sprayed radioactive gas to surrounding areas. The reactor is located in a seismic zone and a geological fault remains. Failures have been recorded in 2002, 2005, and 2006, and reactor life expectancy is expected to last only until 2020. Laguna Verde is one of the last places in the performance classification of the World Association of Nuclear Operators. It is impossible to believe that this place can be safe, so at the moment we don't think it is a good idea to have a nuclear plant in our country. If the plant were safe, we would probably agree, but unfortunately this is not the case.
If energy limits had been taken into account and Anatoly Dyatlov, the energy manipulator at the moment, had listened to what their other two companions were saying to them, at that time the technology was not advanced, so they didn't find a way in which they could drain the radiation towards other countries. I don't believe that it reaches so much potential because the radioactive cloud fell apart before it reached the American continent. And some examples of how it is affected is by the lack of nutrients to the soil, as this will only have many chemicals and it will not serve to grow plants. The radioactivity takes a long time to disappear completely, so that the main area of the explosion will be contaminated with gases. People who live nearby are going to be affected physiologically with some kind of illness, or mentally with the great trauma that they lost everything in a matter of seconds. The air will no longer have the same quality, and there will be restrictions about whether they have to use some kind of protection if they pass nearby. The environment responds in a violent manner as it affects the quality of air, soil, flora, fauna, and the effect of radiation remains on for thousands of years. Humans cannot live between radiation, so a nuclear attack will create a chain of nuclear attacks in response, which would wipe out of almost the whole humanity.
The future is definitely uncertain and frightening, especially considering the ideas of the leaders of the United States and North Korea. The only solution is disarmament, because only the existence of nuclear weapons is a great risk. Even so, the solution is quite difficult to apply, and it will probably take decades to reach an agreement. The United Nations have been fighting since its creation in 1945 for the use of nuclear energy only for peaceful purposes, but it is impossible to force a country by force, so everything will depend on negotiation and awareness.
The situation number 1. On April 6, 1993, a container that had a solution of uranium at the Tomsky plant in Russia blew up and contaminated around 1,000 square kilometers and 500,000 inhabitants. The situation number 2. On September 30, 1999, a GCO nuclear fuel plant in Tokaimura, Japan, an uranium leak was created that killed engineers and about 438 people who were affected by the radiation emitted. The situation number 1. On April 6, 1993, a container that had a solution of uranium at the Tomsky plant in Russia blew up and contaminated around 1,000 square kilometers and 500,000 inhabitants. The situation number 2. On September 30, 1999, a GCO nuclear fuel plant in Tokaimura, Japan, an uranium leak was created that killed engineers and about 438 people who were affected by the radiation emitted. On the morning of April the 26th, 1986, the world was about to have its worst nuclear accident because the Chernobyl power station exploded. The next morning, people were able to see the destruction, but much worse was to come. The disaster had consequences, diseases, and death. People were so scared that thought it was the breakup of the communist regime. In reactor number 4, all were in hands of 3 well-trained men. This night, the control room was preparing for a safety test. They were talking about in which level of power it was safe to begin the test. 31 minutes passed and the test has been demanded by Russia's atomic energy authorities because of an accident that happened years ago, but the chief of the station was ignoring the advice on how the test should be done and the measurements were not correct even though he knew that. 24 minutes to 1, a problem started in the water levels. 22 minutes to 1, the reactor had ground to a complete halt. The chief put a man in charge of solving the problem, but he failed. Within 5 minutes, they've got power rising. 8 minutes to 1, another alarm. Outside the room, nobody knew what was happening. For them, it was a normal night. The water shortage continues to set up alarms, but the engineers were not aware of the consequences of this.
In 1960, the nuclear power has been a key of the communist regime. When Chernobyl was constructed, some warnings were not attended and economic interests were first, so Chernobyl has serious design flaws. The reactor was having serious problems but engineers were not able to detect them. The reactor was a time bomb. The radioactive dust kept spreading, arriving to Russia, Sweden, Stockholm, but not totally invading these countries. On the 28th, the Russians released the information about the disaster to the rest of the world. It took around 2 days to gather accurate information of the disaster. Helicopters from Moscow were sent in the 3rd day after the disaster happened, where the soldiers spread 80 kilograms of sandbags into that place. They filled the fire with sand and boric acid in order to neutralize the radiation.
The second point, the number of people that is affected by the event is 500,000, so here, and the radius of contamination in kilometers is here, so like here. So the graph goes like this. Oops. Its reference point is 0.0. And the domain the basic graph that represents an exponential function, we're going to put 2 points. So the first one is the Chernobyl point, and it's when 161 people that is affected by the event, and the y represents the distance in kilometers, so it's the radius of contamination, and it's interior, like around here, so like in here. And the second point is the Tomsky in Russia, and the number of people that affected by event is the domain is 0, infinity, and the range also is 0, infinity.
I actually like this experience. At the beginning, it was a little difficult to communicate with people from other school, but when we really focused to work, which was a little late, I think, the work was easier.
I liked this project because we were able to work with people and also to socialize with people from the other campus, and we were also able to get to know how they work in there. This was a little bit difficult at the beginning since we didn't know what we needed to do exactly, but then we cleared everything up as a team. I personally think that we could have organized ourselves a little bit better, but at the end I think it turned out very good, even though we weren't able to see our teammates from the other campus physically.
I like this project because this topic is not very related to the class, but taking events or situations using numbers is kind of related to math. I like also the idea of working with other campus because all the projects we do is with the same people. So I like working with different people. It was not that difficult, but we kind of get confused with who does what, but at the end everything resolved very well.
This project was very interesting because we meet people from other campuses, and I'm very satisfied because we were able to work very well as a team and the communication was very easy.
This was a different way of working with the math project. We were not really accustomed to get along with each other, and I really like it even though we couldn't see our classmates physically, but we were talking to each other by message and emails. What I like the most about the project is that we could learn more about how the other schools can work in the same project but using English.